1992 and instantly got involved with the preservation of the petroglyphs. In 1999, I started the Mesa Prieta Petroglyph Project, which was organized for the purpose of trying to record all of the petroglyphs on the mesa and to educate local people and others, and especially local children, about the petroglyphs and to work toward their preservation in whatever way we could. We had our 20th anniversary last year, and everyone is somewhat surprised that we managed to survive for 20 years and to achieve a lot of work, but we did. We started recording petroglyphs in 2002 when we started, and we were not recording just the Wills Petroglyph Preserve. We had a goal of trying to record every petroglyph on the entire mesa, having no idea at the time what that really meant. When we started, we thought there might be as many as 20,000 images on the mesa. We have now recorded almost 70,000, and we still have a whole lot of real estate to cover on this mesa, and so we're quite sure that there will be at least 100,000 when all is said and done and entered into our database.
So this entire area was initially recorded in the 1990s at the invitation of Catherine Wells by Helen and Jay Crotty, who ran an archaeological field school here. It was re-recorded in the mid-2000s by members of the Mesa Prieta Petroglyph Project, especially Janet McKenzie and Candy Bordoon, and Candy's husband, Lee Bordoon. Because of Helen and Jay Crotty's work here in the 1990s, the Archaeological Society of New Mexico's Rock Art Council had data from here, as well as the Galisteo Basin and the Albuquerque area, to establish the standards that we record these to today. So these petroglyphs were actually instrumental in our understanding of petroglyphs and pictographs more broadly in New Mexico, and are very much the basis on which we classify them both here, based on Helen and Jay Crotty's work, but also throughout the state.
The petroglyphs do not exist in a vacuum. They are in the place they are for a reason. The number one reason is because at the bottom of the mesa there is a river, the Rio Grande, that provides a permanent water source for human life. The Pueblo people came here from areas north of here that did not have permanent water sources. And so they came into this area because of the river and its ability to support life for a long period. So that's an important piece of the picture here, as are the mountains, which the mesa faces. The snow, of course, provides the water that gets into the river. It also provided hunting grounds for the people and spiritual connections to the Pueblo people, to all Native Americans. The natural world is full of spirit. The spirit resides in the mountains and the rivers and the land. So those are very important pieces of the context for the petroglyphs and for the lives of the Pueblo people and the people who were here before them. There were other cultures here before them, notably archaic hunters and gatherers who were here for thousands of years. The first time I came here with a real estate person, we parked right where my house is now. I saw the rock up behind me, and I ran up there in about 0.3 of a second and saw that the whole face of the rock is covered with amazing petroglyphs. And I was just stunned by it, by how big it was, how beautiful the images were. The context for it, which was all these huge boulders and the juniper trees. I turned around and saw the trees along the river. And the mountains, which had a lot of snow on them. And it was just the most beautiful place. And I thought, I'm going to live here. I was already a petroglyph junkie. I'd been running around the deserts of California and Utah and places like that for a long time, looking for petroglyphs. And to discover that you could buy acres and acres of them was just stunning to me. So it wasn't very long before I lived here. So this amazing rock panel has a lot of different images on it. But probably the most important ones have to do with rain. We can see that there are two snake-like creatures that also look like lightning, and they could be both, but they probably, serpents are associated with rain. And also, there's a cloud terrace on the rock, a stepped thing that is in the Pueblo culture an image of a cloud. And so that tells us this rock has to do with making rain happen. Anybody who lives here for very long understands that rain is life. If we don't get rain, nobody can live here. And so it's a particularly important rock by where it is and what's on it. World Petroglyph Reserve has, along with marvelous Pueblo images covering Spanish history, it has literally thousands of images created by the Archaic period people who came into the area perhaps 7,500 years ago and made images from that time clear down to perhaps 1,000 or even 500 years ago. What distinguishes them is that they are all non-representational. There are a lot of repeated motifs. We have no idea what the meaning might be because they don't resemble anything in the visual world. But this would be kind of typical. Lots of lines and a pattern of lines, not just random, but not anything that we can really relate to. But they're fascinating. And some of them are carved a half an inch deep, which is the reason we can still see them, because they are so old. If they'd been done superficially, they would be gone by now. But they're something very much worthy of study and very, very interesting to think about. copulation scenes on the Wills Petroglyph Preserve. It's not a real common item, but they exist, and they tend to be utterly charming. You might say sometimes a little exaggerated in terms of the physical properties of the people doing this event here. And I particularly love this one. It's so charming. This female, we know that she's a female because she has female equipment, and she also has the hair whirl hairdo that Pueblo women wore back in the day. And this male character here is quite beautifully drawn, and he's obviously very well endowed. So it's not the most realistic view you might find, but quite charming, I think. We have quite a number of female figures, and we have many that are giving birth. We have others that we know are females because of their gender markings. We have one that has a sun-like head. We've actually learned that, as far as the experts know, it's a deity figure, and it has both masculine and feminine characteristics. And a deity, of course, doesn't have to be any gender, I don't think. But it's this one in particular, the one that my necklace, is very, very charming. Everyone who sees it just loves it. I'm sure that on the Wills Petroglyph Preserve, there are at least 50 images of females. Accompanying this couple is an Avanyu, the two-horned serpent, who's so important in Pueblo cosmology and culture, but he's clearly the Avanyu, the water serpent. Common images on the mesa is that of the snake or serpent, and we find images that are rattlesnakes. We know because they have rattles on their tails, and just kind of generic snakes. But the most exciting category is this mythological creature called Avanyu, who has horns coming out the side of his head. And he's an extremely important creature here. And he's found so many different places, almost anywhere that you would associate with water, you'll find him. He's often coming out of the ground because the underworld is a wet place. And so he's coming out of the underworld. He's one of the most important creatures in Pueblo cosmology. The vast majority of petroglyphs on the Wills Petroglyph Preserve were done by the Pueblo people, but the Spanish arrived in 1598, and shortly after that date, images started appearing which represent the Spanish. The Christian cross would be by far the most common of those. I think something like 8% of all the images on the mesa or on the Wills Petroglyph Preserve are Christian crosses, and not just this, but very fancy things that represent all kinds of Christian crosses in Europe that have names to them. I think there are 25 different named Christian cross types on the mesa. We also have other figures. There are lots of horses and some Spanish lions. I think we found about a dozen of them so far. and some of them are quite thrilling. And here's a good example of one. We can identify him because he has what appears to be a crown on his head. He has a long curving tail over his back, which is a diagnostic feature of a Spanish lion. And then he has a little companion here. They are, we think, probably unique to this area. We don't know of any place else that they occur. But they are a very interesting manifestation of the presence of the Spanish. We think that they were probably done by the Indian people who were very much impressed by this lion image that the Spanish brought. They have their own Pueblo lion images, but this was a different cat. And they recognized that, and they recognized that this cat had a lot of power. And so we think, perhaps reproduce those.
Because these are at least somewhat inspired by Spanish heraldry, we can apply some heraldic terms. Notice that the lion on the right is sort of rearing up with the front legs in the air. This is called the rampant position. And a couple, but not all, of the heraldic lions on the preserve and on the mesa are rampant. This combination of the two figures together seems to always be executed with one figure packed more solidly and deeply than the other. So we have one or two other examples of a similar scene of a rampant heraldic lion with another creature. As Catherine notes, it's wearing the crown. It has the long curving tail. And then also the face is facing forward and rendered almost like a human face. This is very distinctive from, say, how mountain lions would be rendered, because by convention, mountain lions, canids like coyotes and foxes, would be rendered from the side with their heads in profile. So this is another cue that tells us, yeah, it's a quadruped, but it's different from other things that they might see around. We can also begin to just quietly speculate on some of the social interactions that led to this adoption of Spanish heraldry into an indigenous society. And it reminds us of some of these social interactions that happened, sometimes friendly, sometimes tense, over the course of centuries, that create a sort of complex story of how this design from medieval Spain gets here.